thinking, really thinking way ahead. Every once in a while, folks, we have to change the tape
That was that funny
in
little
order to keep,
pauses.
remembering what was said here. But there's just little things like sound effects, like Sonny did there, where you go, shh,
Yeah.
Now I've heard him do that on a lot of things, but, and that's an effect,
Yeah.
and it's using space. I mean, it's using because you got to start it at the right time, let it ring exactly a certain amount of time, and stop it.
Yeah.
And it has to have a dynamic to it, which it does, because there's like a sweep, It isn't just hitting a cymbal and stopping it.
He was like an orchestrator of
Yeah.
percussion,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, the way you hit the cymbal has, and the way you grab it creates what that little beat and a half or whatever it is he's got to do.
Yeah.
How do you know? Now, how do you know what it's going to sound like before you start? I bet you he didn't even know. But he heard something in his head and he did it, and that's how you do it.
Yeah.
And that's how you make sounds. And that's knowing thy drum, knowing thy instrument. He knew it. He knew he could, and he knew exactly how much space he had. And he took a chance and played something that fit perfectly.
Yeah.
And musically,
We're talking with Mel Lewis about Sonny Greer, and right now we're going to hear one more Sonny, or we have a few more Sonny Greer, including some real surprises. I can't wait to play them for Mel because he probably hasn't heard these ones before. But the next one is a very famous one. It was a feature of him called Jumpin' Pumpkins, and I think it makes a nice analogy, or it fits in nicely after the one we just heard. The one we just heard was Wellman Brough on the bass, Barney Bogart on the clarinet, the great Arthur Wetzel on the trumpet, along with Ellington, Sonny Greer, and Wellman Brough, and Freddie Guy from 1928. Now, this next one is from 1941, and I mean, this great metamorphosis has happened. It's 13 years later. Jimmy Blanton and Strayhorn and Ben Webster and all these great people, Rex and Cootie and the great trombone section, and everybody had come in the band, and it was a much different concept. But Sonny's conception isn't that far away from what he did with Wellman Brough, and I think it'll be fun to compare the way that you have Ellington, Wellman Brough, and Sonny Greer, and then Ellington, Blanton, and Sonny Greer.
Yeah.
And it's a great comparison. And Sonny actually does that same little thing when they went, that little thing he did on the cymbal there. He does here, too, in a totally different context, but it fits. It fits perfectly. Sonny Greer with Ellington, 1941.
See, on this whole, he had a few different fills on this thing, and first of all, he played brushes on almost the whole track,
Right.
and he turned around and used the handles on when he's playing the cymbals. I could tell because it sounded like mallet, but it was actually the rubber handles.
Right.
And now Sonny had cymbals there that if you listen throughout his whole career, he had the cymbals he started out with in the 20s. He had the same cymbals all through that whole period, into the 30s and the 40s, right up until, as far as I'll bet you, I'll bet you, because he used to keep them shiny anyway. You know, he used to clean them all the time.
Right.
And he always had the same sound on every record I've ever heard. And I believe that Sonny kept the same cymbals throughout his whole Ellington career. I don't think he changed cymbals at all, because there was some cymbals there that have a sound that he could have never duplicated. Nobody could have. And I've heard him on everything.
Funny you mentioned that because there's some recordings done in late '44 when Sonny was on a little bit of a break from the band. Excuse me. And drummer from Chicago, Hilliard Brown, came in and subbed. And everyone who's ever written about those performances says, oh, it's amazing how much he sounds like Sonny Greer. And I finally figured out, you know what, he's using Sonny's drum set.
That's it.
You know, the bands were like acts in those days. I mean, all the instruments and the cases and the drums.
Yeah,
So
they
when-
went on the trip
right.
and
So the man
they tell
sat
you don't
down
bring
with-
your drums. We
Yeah.
got Sonny's drums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it had a lot to do with why he probably sounded like Sonny.
Well, we didn't. How about that
Sid Catlett?
Sid Catlett thing?
Right.
I'd swear he's playing on Sonny's drums on that. Same thing. You could hear Sid's touch. Definitely, it's a definite different feel.
Yeah.
But you swear, you know, it's not Sid's drums.
I think it's so important to make that point that we're making about Sonny Greer with Ellington's band. It's not, you can't analyze Sonny Greer like you analyze drummer A and B.
No,
You know, he was a percussionist, a composer,
But he was
a
such an integral
music
part.
maker.
Yeah, he was so important to the band. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
when you know, when Louis came in, when Louis Bellson joined the band later on, it was such a drastic change that to me it was as if Ellington might have as well have broke up the band completely and totally reorganized with a whole new group of guys, because that's how different it was.
Yeah.
And to me, it never recaptured. It never had. It was like a new band. No different than when Thad and I, when Thad left our band.
Sure.
I mean, eventually, it didn't take, after a while, the band took on, this band has a whole new character.
Yeah.
It's mine. It's my character. It's what I represent, I mean, you can't, and Thad, even though we're playing the same music, it sounds and feels different. And this is what happened there. It was a totally new Ellington band. Never to be recaptured without, that's probably what, and you notice that everybody, the main interest in Ellington today is of the period of Sonny Greer.
Yeah. He was actually, you
you
could make a case that he was the first avant-garde jazz drummer.
I would
sense.
make that case. I mean,
Yeah.
it would be no problem to do that. But I also believe that he was part of the sound, and Duke knew that. He depended on him, and that the music, that he was definitely one of the very first people that the music was written for, with the knowledge of, I'll write this, and he'll play
Right.
that, which goes back to what you said before about the ping and the pong.
Ping and the pong. And also, one other point is one other charge that is leveled at Sonny Greer that is unfair, is that he didn't swing.
Oh,
Well,
no.
You
yeah,
just play
that's-
someone Cottontail,
Yeah.
the record of Cottontail. And
Well,
tell
you're
me-
going, yeah, but see, go ahead.
No, I was done.
Say what you were going to say.
I was done. I was
Oh.
done at that point. I was just belching.
Well, that shows you the stupidity of a lot of critics and people who are judging, you're judging a man's career on a record.
Right.
Maybe it didn't swing that day.
Right.
Maybe it didn't swing as good as normal, I mean, are we all such swingers that the minute we wake up, we start swinging, and we swing all day long because we're supposed to be, My God, I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
No. Without
I
any
mean, it's a
hills, there are no
situation.
valleys.
Oh, sure. There's got to be a situation. First of all, in those days, to swing on any record in any studio was an accomplishment. because of the distance and the obstacles thrown in front of you by the engineers. They made it more difficult for any band to swing.
Yeah.
You know, so you had to swing. Everything swinging on a record day was like swinging in spite
Yeah. Right.
of, you know.
Reality.
Yeah, the reason Rudy Van Gelder studio recordings swung so hard is because everybody was in a little living room right on top of each other as if they were on a bandstand in a small club.
Yeah.
I mean, how could you miss? You know,
Yeah.
you couldn't go wrong. But to be in a large studio where they got you separated from this one and that one separated, and with a big band, they got everybody spread out, that's what they used to do.
Yeah.
You know, today we scream, you know, we say, hey, we want the band together, we want to set up
Right.
as if we were in the bandstand, you know.
And they they look at you like you're nuts.
Yeah, but we look at them like you're going to do it or else, you know. But I mean, that's not fair to Sonny or to Gene or to any. They went through these routines in those days, being accused of things. The point was, nightly they were on a bandstand playing and knocking everybody out.
That's right.
Most of the time. But every tempo, you know, if the leader sets the wrong tempo on something,
Right.
well, the chances are it might not swing. It just might not make it,
Yeah.
you know. So all you do is try. You do the best you can.
Yeah.
Certain things happen. For something to really happen, certain elements have to be there, you know.
And especially we hear about Rudy Van Gelder and pretty much small group recording. And when you're talking about a big band, of course, you're talking about multiplying those personal dynamics by 16.
Yeah.
And getting everyone to swing and feel good. And,
Right.
you
So
know.
when something is swinging, I mean, it's through. It's not easy. It's through hard work. And if something isn't swinging, you can't blame an individual. You can't say it was Sonny's fault.
Right.
You know. And if he didn't happen to swing on one track of one tune, I mean, out of all the hundreds of records he made,
Right.
I mean, for crying out loud, that's
Well,
ridiculous.
we're about to spring a couple of great things on you. One of the great recordings of Sonny Greer live is the Fargo recordings from 1940, done by our good friend Jack Towers, who has rescued many of our
Yeah.
records. And that's very well known and been issued many times, but lesser known are the great series of Treasury broadcasts that Ellington did in 1945 and 1946 that have been preserved and issued by another good friend, Jerry Valburn, and he's done them in phenomenal sound quality. It's from this series that we get the incredibly rare occurrence of a broadcast of Sid Catlett playing in the Ellington Band. But another broadcast, July 6th, 1946, captures Sonny Greer well recorded in a really kind of boisterous mood. So we're going to listen to these two things with him really just in about as great as he ever played. We'll hear him do another thing that he was one of the first drummers to champion, was that kind of caravan, kind of like
with the tom-toms. And
Latin beat drumming that really was not in your average jazz drummer's vocabulary quite back that early, I don't think. He was probably one of the first ones to make it popular. And then we'll hear something written for a metronome date called Metronome All Out. That was one of those big 12-inch 78s, but we won't hear the Esquire All-Stars play it, the Esquire All-Star Big Man. We'll hear the Ellington Band play it.
Oh, okay.
And Sonny really just throws in all the pots and the pans on this one. It's 7:48. You're tuned in to WKCR-FM in New York, 89.9 on your FM dial. Lauren Schoenberg with you, and again, my pleasure to be hosting the show, or to be just steering it while Mel Lewis is, or I don't know.
well, between us, we're
But
doing
yeah,
pretty
between
good.
we're doing anyway. I'm learning a lot, and I hope you are too out there about jazz drums. Sonny Greer with Ellington live on the air, 1946.
And now, boys and girls, let's hop aboard the caravan as Duke Ellington and his orchestra take off on number one.
what can you say after that? That's hot.
Yeah, it's
Now that was I'll have to admit that's one of the strongest performances I've ever heard come from Sonny on
yeah,
and where he just said, "The hell with it, man! I'm going to play, and
Yeah.
this is fun."
yeah.
And
Oscar Pettiford was the bassist, of course. We should mention there.
Well, with Oscar,
Yeah,
that's Mr. Strongman too, and well, I heard them together many times.
oh, you did.
Oh yeah, sure, and sure, Oscar was there. I remember going to see him. They played in Buffalo a couple times,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah,
And but the main thing there is that there was some modern drumming. I mean, if you want to call it modern, there was
Right.
some modern stuff. I mean, he just got up on top of everything and just said and played not fills but just played. You
right,
know,
right.
you can't call it fills. I wouldn't call it fills. It just played. That's all. He went straight ahead.
Yeah,
Almost like what Chick Webb was doing, only more so.
Yeah.
'Cause it was more opening, and of course the arrangement, the music itself was about as avant-garde as you can get. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't. It just goes to show you like how little we've invented today.
that was called Metronome All Out by Billy Strayhorn, and before that we heard the famous Caravan, and of course, tunes that were, as Mel mentioned before when we was talking about Jumpin' Pumpkins and the Ellington Band, tunes that were written and arranged specifically with Sonny in mind. I mean, these guys
Sonny
knew that
gets
he
a
was going to
sound.
playing drums.
He's getting a sound on Caravan now. He got a sound with the mallets. He played basically what you'd call like a timpani part. He had, whoops.
It's okay.
He had.
Sorry.
Well, I want to wait till you get.
No. The tape with the music.
Oh, all right. See, the important thing there is that he got such a beautiful timbre out of his high and low tom.
Yep.
Because his small tom was very small. It was like what we call a 7x11.
Mm-hmm.
It was a small drum, and then he had this big 16 or 18-inch floor tom that he was. So I mean, it's quite an extreme. Then he had his snares off on his snare drum.
Yeah.
And although if you look at Sonny's set, if you saw pictures of it, he had another tom. He had 3 tom-toms. He had 2 on the drum and 1 on the floor. But
Right.
but every time I saw him, I noticed that he favored that very small one over on the right and the one over here on the floor. He
Mhm.
used them more than anything. He didn't bother with the one over the snare drum as much. I think it was almost there for looks more than anything.
Yeah.
It was a middle. It would have been a middle color, and I don't hear it very often.
Right.
I always hear the high and the low,
Yeah.
and then of course the bass
ah,
drum,
Right.
and then the gong.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably one of the reasons because he had his left hand freed up to play some of the cymbal things. Because I remember he used to play a lot of things with his left hand. He'd play on the cymbals with his left.
Really?
Oh yeah,
You
well
mean
that
hit?
was, yeah. Well, like,
Yeah.
go back there while he's doing something here.
Right.
And he was definitely a two-handed drummer.
A lot of nice things. In fact, one of the most memorable moments I've heard, one of the memorable moments that I remember with you playing was one time doing Sing, Sing, Sing we did up in Tarrytown, and you got into a thing with the sounds of the sticks. I mean, the whole thing of the solo was the theme of it seemed to be, at this particular point, the sounds of the sticks on the drums and hitting the sticks and hitting the drums.
yeah.
And similar to what he was doing there. I mean, the
Yeah.
making making that a musical point out of what you can do with stick sounds on the drums.
You
You
use
know.
whatever you got, everything you got in your hands.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's there. You should use it. I mean, why not? And I think Sonny Greer used, I think he was probably one of the greatest jazz percussionists of all time. And of course, he certainly was in the right band. I mean, that's another important thing, of course. I mean, you got to realize that for Sonny to do what he did, he had to be a member of an organization that allowed him to. And the Ellington Band certainly did. Now, but if you heard the Ellington Band with another kind of person sitting in that chair, maybe the Ellington Band wouldn't have been anywhere near what it was. So it all goes together, you know.
Sure. That's one of the amazing things about the Ellington Band was the, just the confluence, I guess, of all those people in the same band.
Yeah.
Just an amazing thing.
Right.
I mean,
But everybody forgets how how important the drum is. The drummer is so important to how good or bad
Sure.
a band is going to be.
Oh, tell me about it.
So I mean, you really have to realize that the Ellington Band needed Sonny Greer.
Yeah.
It needed him. I don't know anybody else around at that time that could have done for the orchestra what he did.
Maybe Sid Catlett. I mean, it's
Well,
hypothetical.
You don't
I mean,
know because you don't know what Sid would have done from the front.
Right.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's hard
Could
to
have
say.
been,
Right.
could have been, but I don't know. Sid was more of a. Sid was a. Well, we're going to get to him anyway, but
Right.
but I think Sid was more of a swinging drummer than Sonny was. I mean, we're not talking about when I'm saying swinging. I mean, more straight ahead,
Right.
and I think he liked to do more. He liked to. I don't think he was into percussion as much as into making sounds. I think he liked to float more.
Yeah, that's one of the many silly things in the book Duke Ellington by James Lincoln Collier. And one of the silly points he makes is that he says Sonny's drums, that whole drum set and the gongs and the tom-toms and everything was just there for show. He didn't know how to play them. If you listen to what an idiotic statement.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's
You know.
figures.
but then you listen to a record like Caravan or any record like the Jumpin' Pumpkins or any of those records where he's just he's another voice in the band. He's not the drummer.
Well,
He-
first
he's
of all,
a-
how stupid can you be in the first place? It's Ellington's band. I mean, why would he have somebody there that didn't belong there?
right.
Especially if Ellington was if Ellington was such a genius,
Right.
then and Sonny Greer was such a terrible drummer, then why was he there? You know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
Come on.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, who are these people who write things? I mean, what do they play? What do they know about it?
Did you get to keep in touch with Sonny in his later years here in New York when he was playing
yeah,
around
I got
with
to
Brooks
see him.
Kerr
Yeah,
and other people?
yeah, occasionally. But
What a great storyteller
he used to come. He used to come down. I used to run into him in my building because he used to come down there for his treatments when he was ill. So I used to see him. We always had something nice to say out in the hallway. He called me Youngblood,
Yeah.
See, I met when I first met him. Al Killian was going to introduce me to him actually, and Sonny was so loaded, man, that I was brought down to the train, to the
Right.
train car, and Sonny was brought in by a couple of big guys carrying him with a suitcase on his belly. They just dumped him in a seat, and there he was, and that was the first chance I had to meet him. So I didn't meet him, but I had heard him all week.
Yeah.
And I could never get near him, and I was finally going to get a chance to meet him then, and that was in the 40s, and I had to wait till the next time, which was actually back in Buffalo again.
When he came up through with Duke?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this was all with Duke.
Yeah. We're talking with Mel Lewis 5 minutes after 8 o'clock, and we're doing the history of jazz drums in case you just tuned in. Every Wednesday night on WKCR-FM in New York, there's a show called The Musician Show, and it's one of many regularly scheduled jazz shows. Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 p.m., the show is called Jazz Alternatives. And every Wednesday night, again, it's called The Musician Show, where we invite a musician up and have him be the guest host. And Mel has been a guest host here on KCR with me dozens of times. And we are redoing a series of broadcasts that we originally did several years ago on the history of jazz drums. And last week we did Kaiser Marshall and Baby Dodds and Zooty Singleton and Stan King and Ben Pollack and others, Paul Barbarin. And this week we are just plodding along, taking our time, listening to some great records. And I shouldn't say plodding wrong, that's the wrong word. Taking our time and digging all the things that Mel has to tell us about the music and about the men, about these great drummers. And we've just listened to Sonny Greer, and I hope you got a nice feel for what Sonny Greer was all about from those records. You can hear Sonny Greer on every Ellington record between about 1924 and 1949 or so. In case you're wondering where the Sonny Greer records are, just go out and buy any Ellington record from those years, and you'll hear the great modern masters of drums. Of course, one of the great modern masters of drums is right here. That's Mel Lewis, and once again, you can catch him every Monday night at the Village Vanguard, going on the 24th year, with the Jazz Orchestra, also with a new record out called Soft Lights and Hot Music on the Music Masters label, released before that 20 years at the Vanguard on the Atlantic record label, and certainly the Mel Lewis record bins are always well populated at the record stores. You can find any number of recordings, in addition to the great recordings that Mel has made with so many other folks over the past, just about 40 years. Your recording career is about 40 years old now. You started...
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, this year. It's 40 years old.
Amazing. Well, we're going to turn from Sonny Greer now to another gentleman who was pivotal in Mel's career and also in the history of jazz drumming. He's going to introduce a new element of drumming that I don't think we've heard quite yet from any of the other gentlemen. And this is Jonathan Joe Jones. And this is another approach, another idea.
This is a completely different approach. It's soft, for one thing. It's intense, but it's relaxed, and it's part of a rhythm team. I think that's where the big change comes in.
Yeah.
And it takes us away from the 3-man or 4-man rhythm section. This all of a sudden becomes where everybody's sound has to blend with each other. Now, I don't know if they knew that in the beginning, but I think they found it out. They discovered that if we play at a certain level and if we get this thing going, this is what we're going to have.
Yeah.
Because you hear like other records by other rhythm sections from that era, coming out of Kansas City and some of those, Jay McShann stuff and all that.
Sure.
It's not the same.
No.
Although they're for rhythm.
And even the best of the other rhythm sections, for instance, Goodman's rhythm section with Krupa and Alan Roos and Jess Stacy and Harry Goodman, or the Ellington rhythm section, or the John Kirby rhythm section. You can't say they weren't swinging, because they were swinging.
No, but they didn't get this particular blend.
Yeah.
Yeah, these were 4 special people, and I think Joe had so much because the drummer.
Yeah.
The drummer is still, your lead trumpet player and your drummer is still. Without them, you don't have a band.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, let's introduce ourselves to Joe Jones Sound. We'll hear a record that's groundbreaking. The Chick Webb record with Liza and some of the Krupa records with Goodman were very influential for drummers and groundbreaking, because drummers really hadn't gotten in the middle of arrangements before making figures and playing such obvious fills before the 30s, with very few exceptions. And if you remember Chick Webb's fills on Liza, compare them here to Joe's fills. This record turned a lot of heads. This is Sent For You Yesterday. And at the end, when the band goes, ba, 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 and he goes, he does his fills, you'll hear the way that they're integrated into the music, and I think this will make a great comparison with the other things. Joe Jones, Spotlight, Sent For You Yesterday. Here You Come Today, the original recording, 1938, right off of a blue label, Decca 78.
Don't the moon look lonesome shining through the trees? Don't your house look lonesome when your baby pack up to leave? Sent for you yesterday, and here you come today. Sent for you yesterday, and here you come today. You can't love me, baby, and treat me that way.
A little scratchy, but still nice.
Oh yeah, I remember playing. I remember when I was a kid, playing the stock arrangement on that exactly. With the wah 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 da 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 chorus and all that.
Yeah.
For dancing, we played. We used to play dances every Friday night, and then during the summer every night, and that was one of our favorites. And I think I recall I used to play those same kind of fills. Yeah, but the triplets,
Yeah.
and that's the little difference you're hearing with Joe, is he's playing triplets. You got to play him with a triplet feel, whereas a lot of the earlier drummers we listened to played more single stroke. They played biddle-diddle-diddle,
Right.
where he's playing bada, just nice open triplets, simple.
Right.
Which falls right into his style. Also, the hi-hat starts in the beginning and goes right through.
Yeah.
It never changes, except he adds a backbeat here and there.
Right. Which goes to show that you can swing a band with a hi-hat, which is another lost art these
That's
days.
right. That's it.
I've played with, again, I don't want to get on my soapbox, but gosh, I've played with drummers who haven't touched the hi-hat. I know, there are people who haven't, I'm not saying they don't play it a lot. I've heard drummers who never play the hi-hat. And it would seem like someone walking around with one arm tucked in their pocket and never using it. It's like being a cripple.
They don't know how to play it.
Yeah.
They really don't know.
And-
They're not taught how to play it.
Yeah,
And,
and they don't hear it.
They don't hear it. They don't. They either think it's old-fashioned, but basically they just don't know how to play it.
Yeah. It's such a
They don't know how to coordinate that. There's a way of
Yeah.
doing it, and it's not open, closed, closed, open.
Right.
know.
You mean
It's not ta-ta-da. It's an open, closed, half open, and so on.
Yeah.
There's a feel. It's a
Yeah.
touch you get with the coordinating your feet. And you hardly press. The thing actually isn't closed that much, and so
Right.
on. It's an art. It's something
Yeah.
that Joe was the master of from those days, and he created a sound that was just so beautiful. The cymbals too,
Oh, yeah.
and the touch he had on
Yeah.
them.
We're going to hear more of that on the next record.
Oh,
that
sure.
was a little bit of a scratchy 78. This next one that we're going to hear really has sublime cymbal work, very well captured. And so I want to get to that right away. Another thing that I think he introduced to it, it's a variant of what you were talking about with the triplet feel with the fills as opposed to, da 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 and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. With the more relaxed quarter note and eighth note triplets, is the implication of the 3 against 4 thing with the hi-hat.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Like,
Yeah, cha da 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 da
Yeah.
da da.
well, that's pretty deep
Yeah.
in concept. Because That hadn't been done before, and you
No.
hear him on those Basie records
No,
implying
and everybody
3/4 measures.
Yeah, he does that. I mean, he that was that was his creation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
That's a marvelous thing. You can break it up any number of ways.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's listen to Joe Jones. Even captured better sound-wise. This is a famous small group recording of the Royal Garden Blues. Buck Clayton on trumpet, Don Byas on the tenor, and the All-American Rhythm section. Walter Page, Freddie Green, Joe Jones, Basie at the piano. This is the Royal Garden Blues. And then when we'll come back, we'll ask Mel about when he first heard Joe Jones play the ride cymbal very early on in the game, because this is the same kind of thing, probably the same cymbal Mel heard just a few years earlier. It's 17 minutes after 8. Mel Lewis is here, and it's the history of jazz drumming, and we're going to another track now from Joe Jones. Stay tuned.
Yeah, see that's typical Joe Jones. That's I heard all of his things, his
Yeah.
rhythm playing tricks in there,
Yeah.
which emphasizes the hi hat with the back and forth beat
Right.
and the rim shot on 4. He used a lot of that rim shot on 4, but not every bar.
Right. Like
Philly
Philly
Joe.
Joe.
And that besides that was another kind of rim shot.
Right. That was
This is a rim shot that he actually hits the stick. It's another kind of, it's a stick shot. It's a stick rim shot. It's not a rim shot that. See, the other one actually you play the rim with the stick.
Right.
You actually hit the rim. Then there's the other backbeat, which you hit the other. You hit the stick. You hit the rim with the stick. This is where you hit the stick with the stick.
right. Oh, like wham.
Yeah.
Right.
It's another sound altogether.
Yeah.
And that Joe used this one a lot. And then every once in a while he'd stick in badin, which was
Right.
hitting the rim with both sticks. And these are the things I remember, that were uniquely his. And he uses all that on this. I heard every drop of that. Now, when he went to that ride cymbal, now that was a lousy ride cymbal, frankly. It was not a very good. That's not the one I heard him first play. The one I first heard him play was a very distinct, a very heavy little cymbal, and he had it on a spring holder.
Hmm.
This one was very splashy.
Right.
This sounded like it was a little larger and didn't have and it was just it just didn't have a great sound to it. I mean, he played it great, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
But the sound itself that wasn't a good ride cymbal. It
Yeah.
didn't have any great quality to it. It was sort of a trashy. It wasn't Chinese.
It almost sounded Chinese.
Yeah, but it wasn't. You
yeah.
know.
Yeah. That was
So-
the Royal Garden Blues, Buck Clayton, Don Bias, Joe in the All-American Rhythm section. I have one more recording of Joe with the Basie Band, and then we're going to hear a real treat, one of his patented snare drum brush features, which
Okay.
will be a lot of fun. This next one is important because it has Lester Young on it, and it's the Basie Band playing Rockin' in Rhythm, a tune which you wouldn't associate with the
No,
Basie Band,
no.
from 1940. And I think one of the things that made, well, it's not that I think it's a fact, one of the things that made the Basie Band so special in those years was Lester Young and Joe and the the freedom with the beat that they both played with. And you can hear Joe behind Prez here taking all kinds of chances and doing a lot of things that this kind of playing that you'll hear Joe do here never really got captured in the recording studios. This is the live kind of stuff that you just
Yeah,
wouldn't
well-
get away with on a recording date. So this is a rare recording that's been issued recently on the Everybody's label of the Basie Band playing Rockin' in Rhythm. You listen to when Joe goes to the ride cymbal behind Lester's solo there. Same way he does like on the 1 o'clock jump. Very interesting. Okay, 1940. We're going to focus on Joe Jones. That's an oddity.
It was different. You see how Joe would get swinging harder when Prez would come in.
Oh, yeah.
So that was that buddy stuff, you know.
Yeah.
My favorite player.
Yeah.
And you could hear it. You could hear all of a sudden it just got more buoyant and more happy.
Yeah.
There's also, I noticed on the out chorus there, and going into his bass drum, he sort of played more of 1 and 3. I mean, he was playing 2 and 4, but 2 and 4 were lighter, and which was strange. I mean, I could hear the bass on 2 and 4, the bass violin more,
Yeah.
and I could hear the bass drum more on 1 and 3. He wasn't playing 2 to the bar. He was playing but he was playing. Actually, he was lighter on 2 and 4 with the bass drum.
Yeah.
And that was strange.
Yeah.
But that's what he was doing.
I've heard quotes from him where he said that the funny thing about the Basie band was it was the meeting of the Benny Moten band. It was a 1 and 3 kind of band. It was still like,
Yeah.
you know, right? And the Walter Page Blue Devils band was a definite 2 and 4
and
band.
4.
And he said that they came together in the Basie band, and that's where you got that
You know,
even
you got a 1, 2, 3,
3,
and 4.
4. band.
But I noticed on that
Yeah.
for some reason or other, when he got to the last couple of choruses going out, I didn't hear the 2 and 4 on the bass drum as much as I did on the 1 and 3.
Yeah.
But it was still, you know, heavy Joe Jones. That was,
Yeah.
you know, and again, but see, we were looking for that thing on 4.
He didn't give it to us.
He didn't give it to us at all, hardly.
Which showed his sense of
Yeah.
whatever, because he did it once.
Yeah.
He did it the first time.
But I on so many recordings he's
Yeah.
done it, you know.
Yeah.
But then again, this was live,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
He did other things live.
Yeah. And important to
He
hear.
might have done it in the recording session to help the band to stay together.
Right.
You know, that's another thing, you know, because that's a drummer's job, is what will help. And when you get out on a gig, and sometimes you just don't care because you're out having a good time and everything's happening great, so who
Yeah.
cares? We're not recording. But in a recording studio, where
Yes.
everything has to be, you have to sort of play it safe.
Yeah.
Because, you know, especially in studios, a lot of safe playing has gone
Oh,
on.
yeah.
We all know that. And
Yeah.
so it's very possible that he realized that they needed those things.
It was great to hear, you know, to compare him with the other drummers. They're also in those out choruses. As a drummer, I mean, he was contributing to the music. He was doing things,
yeah,
setting off
yeah.
little explosions
Yeah.
and stuff, but in a totally different way than.
But his
than,
sense of build also, you know.
Yeah.
Although Joe, a lot of times he'd come on strong right from the start.
Yeah.
He was a strong. He wouldn't let things go. You know,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
He'd start hitting it right away.
Could you tell us that great story about the first time you met Joe Jones?
Oh, the first time I met him.
And when it was?
Well, it was a night. It was around 38 or 39. I'm not sure. It was at the Century Theater in Buffalo, and I was see we were all the children under 12 or 13, I think. We were quarantined. There was a polio epidemic going on at that time, and we weren't allowed to congregate in public places. And on the last day of the Basie engagement, the famous band, the band with Prez and Herschel and Buck and all these guys, this famous band that I had never seen, was closing that night on a Thursday night at the Century Theater, and the quarantine was lifted at 6:00.
Oh.
And so I was. I ran down to the theater and caught the next show after dinner. I caught that show and the last show. And when the show was over, I was thrilled. And that's when I first saw the ride cymbal and the spring holder and Earl Warren singing Moon Nocturne and all that. I told him I used to kid him about it too. And the man holding the tenor sax, so funny and all that. And I mean, this band that I had heard on the radio but never saw, you know. And Joe up there with his Gretsch Gladstone maple drums, you know, with the single tension drums. Well, I mean, the bottom heads were pigskin with tacks. They were tacked on.
Pigskin with
That's why they got such a nice deep sound.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he had timpani rods instead of key rods to tune them. so he could tune them in a second. That was a little smart innovation on his part. For fast tuning, he could tune while he was playing, without worrying about dropping a drum key and all that. The tom-toms.
Mm-hmm.
He had timpani rods, what you call timpani rods on them, like the bass drum.
I've seen them on the...
Yeah, and also, if you notice, Joe always got a nice deep sound on his drums. That's that great. He always got one of the greatest sounds on the drums. But that was that Gretsch sound that they always talked about. Really, he got such a fantastic depth out of his drums, you know, and yet everything was clean.
Right.
And so I saw him, and when the show was over, when the second show was over, I ran outside and I nailed him with my questions about that ride cymbal and all that. And he says, "Hey son," he says, "I got to get out of here." He says, "I got to meet somebody." He says, and he says, but I'm glad you like that sound. He says, and I says, "Yeah." I said, "I'd like to know what kind of cymbal you had." And he said, "Well, I don't have any time to tell you right now, but next time." No, anyway, he was trying to get away from me because he was going to meet a chick at the burlesque house. But what he didn't know is that I had to get to the burlesque house to meet my father. My dad was working in the pit. So he jumped in a cab, and I just ran. I ran up the street, and I got there, and sure enough, he's out in the back, and he's waiting to get into the back door. And here I nailed him again. And I caught him again, and I got him right back into these questions and about the hi-hat and how do you do this and how you do that. And he got so interested in answering me. I mean, you know, I don't remember what he told me, but I mean, the point is, all of a sudden, he says, "God," he says, "I hope she's still there." And he finally gets in backstage, and I went in, and he says, "What didn't find?" He wanted to know what I was doing there. I said, "Well, I come to meet my father so I can go home, you know, in the car with him." And because I was way beyond the curfew, actually, but
Right.
This was a special night. And it was summertime, too. It was
Right.
still during summer vacation. It wasn't a matter of school or anything. So he ran in, and he came out later. He came out, and he says, "Ah, you made me miss her. She's gone." You know.
Yeah.
And then years later, you know, he said he never forgot that. He says, "Oh, I remember you, redhead." He says, "You're the guy." He says, "You're the kid that gave me all the right questions at the wrong time." You know. And it cost him a date.
But
I
that,
said,
yeah. But that,
Except I said to him at that time, I said, "Yeah, you probably didn't lose anything." He says, "Most likely."
but you got to hear him at an early stage there with the band.
Yeah.
Now, how did it strike you? As now, of course, you were a very young band there, 10 or 11. But of course, your dad was a drummer, and you had been already digging drums and listening to them. How did someone like Joe strike you after hearing all the other kind of Eastern drummers? All of a sudden, hearing what's known as a Southwestern, Western kind of drummer.
You know,
the most obvious.
well,
thing.
I never looked at anything quite that. I mean, I frankly didn't think about it in those terms and then at all. I didn't know who was from where, and I was too young to really be into that. To me, they were all from New York. You think I knew Count Basie's band was from Kansas City?
Right.
I mean, I didn't know that. To me, it was New York. Everything was from New York. I mean, honestly,
Mhm.
I had no idea that.
How did his drumming strike you as different?
Well, it was just different.
Right.
You know, every drummer I heard was different, and I could hear the difference.
Yeah.
But I didn't know where or why, or all I knew was that each one had something, and that the ones I seemed to like the best were the ones who played the most simple.
Right.
And which up to that point, you know, was Joe and Gene, you know, and then when I finally heard Buddy about a couple of years later, he didn't impress me at all because he was too fancy, you know.
Yeah.
I liked the ones who reminded me of my father. Simplicity, you know,
Yeah.
relaxed, you know, and I could hear what they were doing,
Right.
and they got nice sound, you know. But I didn't have any idea where they were from. See, I think too much has been made of a lot of that.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, from a history standpoint, it's interesting to know where a man is from because of how did he learn? I mean, where did he hear it? And the history of music, where did it all come from, and so on. You know, but when you get right down to it, and you figure it all out, that your best bands were made up of people from all over. You know, then what difference did it make?
Oh, sure.
You know?
Well, I guess it just stems from those early years of jazz before radio and recordings were so big.
Yeah.
When there were stylistic things that were happening in different places because they didn't travel. But once records and radio started, a band in California could
Yeah.
hear
Yeah.
a band in New York.
But I
and
mean,
Chicago.
I couldn't care less who was a Texas tenor player. I mean, who cares? I really, to this day, I don't care.
Yeah.
I just, all I know is, does he play good?
Yeah.
And do I like him? Do I personally like him? And if he plays great, and I don't care if he's from China.
Right.
You know.
Now there are a lot of great drummers that we're not getting to, and I'm sure if there are a lot of drum mavens out there saying, "Oh, why didn't they play?" Oh, you talk. You can't get to everyone. Would have to. I'll take the responsibility for picking who we're talking about. Although I kind of know who Mel likes, and who the important people were. But of course, there are folks, names that should be mentioned. Someone that you probably heard then, who I would assume impressed you, would have been Ray Baduch.
Oh, sure.
What a dynamic drummer he was.
Of course, and I saw him with the Crosby band,
Right.
and I saw George Wedling with Paul Whiteman.
What kind of drummer was George Wetling?
He was a wonderful drummer. I saw him with Whiteman, but I also saw him on the street here, in New York, and and of course, and there's a guy who I never saw him with a hi-hat. He didn't even use one. He played on the snare drum, and he had his wooden shell drums, with the wooden rims, and people don't realize how hard he swung. And he was a nice man, very intelligent man.
Mhm.
Really into music, really into the works.
Yeah.
And but because he played with Whiteman, does that make him less? There was a guy named Orman Downs
Mhm.
who played with Kay Kaiser.
Mhm.
Orman Downs was a swinging drummer,
Really.
an excellent drummer, yeah. And drummers knew it, but he was with a band that played shows, he was making money, but he could swing,
How about the drummer with Casa Loma,
Uh,
Tony
Tony
Brig-
Briglia.
Briglia?
Yeah, I remember Tony.
Yeah.
And that was a great band, so he had to be good,
Right.
And you had Jimmy Vincent with Tony Pastor's band, and there was and Alvin Stoller,
Yeah.
who did a lot of. It was with Tommy Dorsey and
Ralph Collier.
and Ralph Collier, and
Jack the Bear Parker.
Frankie Carlson,
Yeah.
From Woody's band.
He was a good. Yeah, he's very swinging on those early. On those
yeah,
early records.
Buddy Schutz with the Jimmy Dorsey band was an excellent drummer,
Yeah. George Jenkins.
George I saw, with Hamp's band.
Yeah.
And there's so many. We could go on and on. Then
Yeah.
then you had guys like in the studios that were making great records here in New York. Sal Gubin,
Yeah.
and then on the it's Maury Feld and Nick Fatul.
Nick Fatul.
These are guys that Mickey Screamo.
Yeah. When we come back next week, we're going to be getting into Davy Tuff and Big Sid Catlett and drummers like that. And again, I'd like to remind you, it's 8:41. You're listening to WKCR FM in New York, 89.9 on your FM dial. Lauren Schoenberg here, and Mel Lewis with me. And we're doing the history of jazz drums. And I think we have one more to play by Joe Jones, and then we'll kind of slowly wrap it up for today and pick up. No reason to get into another drummer this late in the show.
No.
But let's listen to Joe Jones and something that he didn't feature so much in the Basie years, but once he got to New York and started working and all with Joe Bushkin and with Lester Young and with all the great little trio, Teddy Wilson, and he became so famous for his snare drum.
Yeah,
work.
well then and Joe used to always love to brag about his big band with him and Buckner. He
Oh,
says,
right.
"Yeah, the big band's working tonight," he'd say. Or, have you heard our big band?
Yeah.
It was him and Buckner, wherever
Yeah.
Milt Buckner. That was.
Well, this is the famous trio we had with Ray Bryant and Tommy Bryant. And we'll hear Old Man River, which is kind of a showpiece. Joe Jones and one of his patented great snare drum pieces of Ledger Demand. Ledger Demand. The one and only Joe
Yeah.
Jones.
Yeah, see now, that just shows you what a modern drummer he was. I mean, you know, he was, because all the things he did on this thing, the brushes, the whole works, I mean, was all today type of drumming. I mean, there was no, I mean, he didn't go outside anywhere, but I mean, but the dynamics and he also he didn't follow the routine of the tune. After a while, he gave up on that and just started going into patterns. He changed tempos. He did this and that. But how he played, the type of things he played, are what everybody plays today. You know. Now, that's not because he listened to what's going on today. Because knowing Joe, he didn't listen to nothing.
And that record was 30 years old anyway.
Of course. So I mean, it's stuff that they went and heard him.
Right. I think it's Max Roach has that famous quote: "For every 3 beats a drummer plays, 2 belong to Joe Jones."
To Joe Jones, that's it. And I believe that too. So, I mean, I think it was a good way to. I mean, there's not much you can say about Joe Jones, other than he was the father of modern drumming, and there's the proof right there.
Yeah, it's so
You know.
clean and so
Yeah.
tasteful and
You know.
and everything.
And, just
Yeah.
like, well, he was the father of modern drumming, same as Prez was the father of modern tenor playing. I mean, you know. I mean,
Modern jazz.
yeah, these guys, these particular people
Yeah.
had such foresight. I mean, you know, they could see. I mean, they knew, you know, and they made that bridge. They set up that whole thing.
Yeah.
Going from, which brought us into the bebop era. Joined it, never really joining it, but always having, just they contributed a large slice.
Yeah. They who was it had a great analogy. They said something like Lester was out planting the seeds in the field kind of thing, and
Yeah.
then made it possible for the other people to do what they were going to do. But if he hadn't laid the groundwork, then it
Yeah.
wouldn't have been possible. Yeah.
Papa Joe. I mean, I got to spend a lot of time with him. You know, he was fun to be around. He drive you nuts sometimes, but it was always those. I'll take those pleasures again anytime. You know?
Oh, me too.
And we used to hang out a lot up at the old drum shop, and it was fun, you know, and hearing his stories, and but mainly every time I heard him play, it was always a pleasure. Always, you know, you never got the feeling that here was a man getting old. Never. I never got that feeling from him. You know, I watched him get sick. You know, I watched him get old. You
Yeah.
know, and get he became ill. You know, but you never heard it.
It's true. You know,
Yeah.
I had a marvelous experience, one I'll never forget at Carnegie Hall. I think it was a Basie tribute concert. I can't remember exactly what the reason for the concert was. But I was backstage hanging out with the musicians, and Joe, by this time, had a cane and a beer, and
Yeah.
he wasn't playing, and he was supposed to have played, and George Wein and everyone was all throughout the rehearsal asking him if he felt like playing. He says, I am. You know, he didn't feel like playing and wouldn't play. And after the concert began, this was just, this must have been maybe 82 or 83, maybe even 84. And he felt the gumption to go play. Now, by this time, I wasn't backstage anymore. I had gone out to my seat. And they announced Joe Jones. And it took not 15 minutes, what seemed like 15 minutes. It took a few minutes for him to hobble out and sit behind the drums. And I remember having awful feelings that this was just going to be awful. And the audience was quiet, and it seemed like a letdown. And he started to reach for the sticks and play, and for a couple of minutes it was very tentative. And then the most amazing thing happened. This metamorphosis happened, and in another couple of minutes, this was Joe Jones in 1938 or something. He lost all the infirmities and all the frailties of the condition he was in, and just shed 50 years like that in front of thousands
great.
of people at Carnegie Hall and played this great drum solo, and then finished it, and he walked off. He walked off a different person than the person he walked on. By the time I got backstage after the concert, of course, he was back to normal. It was an amazing tribute to him and to the powers of music, and one that, he certainly made a statement that night.
Yeah, I got to hear him with Buddy's band at the Bottom Line.
Buddy
Rich.
Joe Jones with Buddy Richards.
Buddy, yeah,
Oh.
and we got him out there playing they played the 1 o'clock jump,
Mm-hmm.
and we couldn't get him off. I mean, he just wanted to stay up there, and I mean, I was there, you know, but first getting him up there was a problem, you know, and then we couldn't get him off. Oh, he felt so he just wanted to play.
Yeah.
He got into it,
Yeah.
and so they just let it go until finally they had to shut the lights off, you know. But he just didn't want to leave. He was so happy, and he played wonderful. And that was the last time I heard him.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy too, and unfortunately we have to leave right now, but we have the opportunity to come back next week.
Yeah.
Lauren Schoenberg and my very special guest, Mel Lewis, signing off. It's 5 minutes before 9 o'clock, and we'll be back next Wednesday at 6 p.m. for part 3 of what looks like it's now going to be 5, 6, up to 10 parts. Who knows how many parts on the history of jazz drums. It's a lot of fun. And we'll see you next Wednesday, and I think we'll probably begin with Dave Tuff,
Fine.
which is
That'd
a
be
nice,
great. That'd be nice.
something to look forward to. So, Mel, thanks, and see you next week.
Okay.
Okay, everybody, see you next Wednesday night. Stay tuned for
Late City.
Inner City,
Late City.
Late City Edition.
There you go.
Okay, special news programming here on KCR. We'll go out with the Mel Lewis Quintet with Dick Oates, Jim McNeely, John Mosca, Mark Johnson from the album Mellifluous, the Mel Lewis Quintet, and we'll go out with Jim McNeely's Giving Way.